Chelsea are falling apart, and even Thiago Silva cannot watch anymore. There is something deeply painful about watching someone who loves a club sit in the stands and fight back tears, while the team they gave everything for falls to pieces right in front of them. That is exactly what happened at Stamford Bridge on Monday, 4th May 2026, when Thiago Silva, one of the greatest defenders to ever wear a Chelsea shirt, came to watch his former club play Nottingham Forest. He did not come as a guest of honor being celebrated, he came as a fan who still cares, and what he saw clearly broke his heart. Chelsea lost 3-1. It was their sixth Premier League defeat in a row. They are sitting in ninth place in the table. And the man who anchored their defense for years was captured on camera, showing exactly how bad things have gotten. If a player who gave so much to this club can barely hold himself together watching from a seat, what does that say about where Chelsea are right now? Let us break it all down properly. How bad was this defeat, really? Before we talk about Thiago Silva and what he said, let us set the scene properly because the result and the way it happened matter a lot here. Chelsea lost 3-1 to Nottingham Forest at home. Forest are a side currently in the Europa League semi-finals, so they are not a bad team by any means, but Chelsea were at home, they were playing in front of their own fans, and they were beaten so convincingly that the scoreline actually flatters them a little. The most alarming part of how the game went was how quickly Chelsea fell apart. They conceded 2 goals so fast that it became the quickest they had gone 2 goals down at home since 2017. Think about that for a second. Nearly a decade of games at Stamford Bridge, and this was the fastest they have shipped 2 goals in that time. What made it worse was who scored them and how. Nottingham Forest's starting striker was actually their third choice forward. This was not Forest at full strength up front. Chelsea's defense, featuring Tosin Adarabioyo and Trevoh Chalobah, was ripped apart by a striker who was not even the first or second option for his own team. That detail alone should make every Chelsea supporter stop and ask a very serious question. How did things get this bad? The 6-game losing run that tells the real story, 6 consecutive Premier League defeats, 6 games in a row where Chelsea have gone out, played, and come back with nothing. This is not a rough patch. This is not a team going through a difficult week or two. 6 games is a pattern. 6 games is a problem that goes much deeper than tactics or individual mistakes on the pitch. To put this in some context, think about what 6 losses in a row actually means at a club like Chelsea. This is a club that has won the Champions League twice. They have had title-winning seasons. They have had squads full of internationals and world-class talent. And right now, they cannot string together a single win. The position in the table says it all. 9th place. Not fighting for the title, not pushing for the top 4. 9th, sitting in mid-table, watching other clubs move past them while their own performances get worse and worse. And after this latest loss, interim manager Callum McFarlane had to answer questions he probably does not have clean answers to. The club is in a position where even their short-term decision-making on the day raises questions. McFarlane started Levi Colwill on the bench, despite the defender being one of their better options, saying before the game that Colwill was not quite ready for big minutes yet. But by halftime, with the score already looking bad and the defense completely exposed, he had no choice but to put Colwill on anyway. So either Colwill was ready and should have started, or he was not ready, and putting him on at halftime was a gamble. Either way, the decision-making around the whole situation did not inspire much confidence. Cole Palmer, Thomas Tuchel, and a missed penalty. At the worst possible time, there was one moment in the first half that brought an extra layer of embarrassment to the whole afternoon. Cole Palmer stepped up to take a penalty. In the stands watching was Thomas Tuchel, the New England national team manager. Palmer is one of England's key players and a huge name in international football right now. The penalty could have changed the game. It could have pulled Chelsea back into it and changed the mood in the stadium completely. He missed it. Now Palmer is a top player and even the best miss penalties. That is football. But the timing of it in front of the England manager in a game Chelsea desperately needed to turn around made it feel like so much more than just a missed spot kick. Tuchel was there watching. He saw the full performance. He saw Palmer not at his best. He saw a Chelsea side that looked disorganized, low on confidence, and struggling to perform under pressure. What impression did that leave? That is something Chelsea fans will be thinking about for a while. Joao Pedro speaks and his words say more than he probably intended. After the game, Chelsea attacker Joao Pedro spoke to the press. His goal late in the match was the only real positive moment from a Chelsea point of view, a stunning strike that at least gave the scoreline a slightly less embarrassing look. But what he said in his post-match interview was actually quite telling. He said, and these are his direct words, "I don't think it's about the coach, it's on the players to step up. It's difficult to say something." Read that again slowly. It is difficult to say something. That phrase right there gives you a window into the dressing room. When a player comes out after a defeat and his honest response is that it is difficult to even know what to say, that is someone who is clearly troubled by what is going on. He is not angry and blaming the tactics. He is not confidently saying the team will bounce back. He is sitting there trying to find the right words and struggling to do it. He also specifically said, it is not about the coach. That is significant because it suggests there are conversations happening around this team where the manager is being questioned, and Pedro wants to make clear he does not think that is the issue. He is pointing the finger at the players, at the group, at the individuals who need to take more responsibility. That kind of honesty from a player after a defeat is actually refreshing in some ways, but it also paints a picture of a squad that is not quite together, not quite believing, and not quite sure who or what is going to fix things. Thiago Silva watches on and cannot hide what he feels. Now we get to the moment that really captured the mood of this whole situation. Thiago Silva is 41 years old. He played for Chelsea from 2020 to 2024, winning the Champions League with them in 2021. He was a leader, a calming presence, a defender who brought organization and discipline to a backline that badly needed it. When he was there, Chelsea looked solid. He was not just a good player, he was a standard setter. He has since moved on. In January this year, he joined Porto, and in the weeks leading up to this Chelsea versus Forest game, Porto had just won the Portuguese league title. Silva was part of a championship-winning side. His season has been brilliant, so he took a few days off and came to London. He watched his old club play, and what unfolded in front of him clearly hit him hard. Sky Sports cameras picked him up in the stands during the game, looking visibly frustrated. The footage went around social media quickly because it said everything. Here was a man who poured so much into this club, watching the current players struggle to do the basics, and he could not keep a straight face. And then the quote that went alongside the video made the rounds. Whether this was something Silva said publicly or something being shared widely, the sentiment is clear and it carries weight because it reflects what so many people connected to this club are thinking. The quote reads, "After a defeat like this at Stamford Bridge, someone has to tell the truth. The owners have to blame themselves for where Chelsea is today. You cannot keep making poor decisions, changing managers, spending crazy money on players without proper direction, and expect things to magically work. Chelsea is a massive club, but right now it feels like there is no clear plan. The fans are suffering, the players are under pressure, and the results show exactly where the club is heading if nothing changes." Every single word of that lands hard because it is not coming from a pundit or a journalist. It is coming from someone who played there, who cared deeply, and who is hurting. Notice how Silva goes straight to the top. He does not blame the players first. He does not blame the manager. He starts with ownership. He says the owners have to blame themselves. That is a significant thing to say publicly about the people who run the club you played for. It takes a certain kind of courage and honesty to do that, and it says something about how far beyond individual performances this problem has gone. The ownership question that Chelsea cannot keep avoiding Silva is not the first person to raise concerns about how Chelsea is being run. Since Todd Bailey and his consortium took over the club in 2022, the spending has been extraordinary. The numbers thrown around in transfer fees are staggering. Chelsea have broken records, spent huge amounts on young players locked into long contracts, and rebuilt their squad multiple times in the space of a few years. But what has all of that spending produced? Where is the direction? Since the takeover, the club has gone through multiple managers. Thomas Tuchel was let go. Graham Potter came and went. Frank Lampard had a caretaker spell. Mauricio Pochettino came and left after one season. Enzo Maresca then came in. And now the team is being managed on an interim basis by Callum McFarlane. That is a lot of change at the top of the dugout for a period of just a few years. And every time a new manager comes in, the story gets reset. New ideas, new formations, new ways of playing, new players brought in to fit a new system. But the problems keep coming back. The inconsistency keeps coming back. The defensive fragility keeps coming back. At some point, you have to ask whether the issue is the managers or whether the managers are being set up to fail. When the structure around them is unclear, when the squad is not built with a long-term vision, when decisions are being made by multiple sporting directors and executives rather than one clear footballing mind, it becomes very hard for any manager to succeed. Silva's point about there being no clear plan is the key thing here. You can spend as much money as you want. But if the spending is not guided by a clear football philosophy and a long-term vision for what the club wants to be, the money just creates confusion rather than progress. How much longer can Chelsea keep doing this before something fundamentally changes at the top? What the fans are going through, it is easy to talk about managers, owners, and tactics. But let us not forget the people who pay to come to Stamford Bridge every week, the people who buy shirts and travel to away games and invest their emotions into this club. Chelsea supporters have had to sit through 6 consecutive Premier League defeats. They have watched their team struggle against opponents they should be competing with. They have seen young players who cost enormous amounts of money perform well below expectations. They have watched as one manager after another comes and goes without things actually improving in any lasting way. After the Forest game, the mood inside the stadium was described as dark. Joao Pedro's late goal gave a brief spark, but it was a consolation in a game that had already been lost. The supporters who stayed to the end deserved better than that. Silva himself acknowledged the fans in that quote. He said the fans are suffering, and he is right. The emotional toll of watching a club you love perform this badly over an extended period of time is real. These are not just results on a screen. For a lot of people who follow Chelsea, this is a source of genuine pain right now. What would it take to give those supporters something to believe in again? The painful contrast of Silva's own season. One of the most bitter parts of this whole story is the contrast between where Thiago Silva is right now and where Chelsea are. While Chelsea are losing game after game, sitting ninth in the Premier League and going through yet another period of chaos and confusion, Silva has just won a league title with Porto. He played consistently. He contributed to a team that had a clear direction and good organization. He ended his season by celebrating a championship. Then he took a few days off and came to watch his old club lose at home in a way that left him fighting back tears. There is something almost poetic and tragic about that image. The man who was not wanted back in January because the club decided his age and experience were not worth taking a chance on is now a champion, and the club that turned him down is in ninth place, losing to Forest's third-choice striker. Chelsea reportedly had the chance to bring Silva back in the January window. According to reports, Silva was actually interested in returning to the club, but Chelsea decided against it. The reasons given were around his age and the kind of profile they were looking for. And yet the current defensive situation with Tosin Adarabioyo and Chalobah being torn apart by a backup striker makes you wonder whether having Silva in that dressing room, even just as a presence, might have made a difference, not because he would magically solve every problem, but because leaders matter. Experience matters. The kind of player who sets standards and demands more from those around him matters enormously. Chelsea chose not to bring him back. He went to Porto, won the title, and is now watching from the stands with tears in his eyes. You genuinely could not write this story. So, what needs to change? This is the question that every Chelsea supporter, every analyst, and apparently even Thiago Silva himself is asking. What needs to happen for things to get better? The honest answer is that there is no single fix. This is not a situation where you make one change and suddenly everything improves. The problems run through multiple levels of the club at the same time. At the ownership level, there needs to be a clearer vision for what Chelsea wants to be. The spending has to be more focused and strategic. The constant managerial changes have to stop. The club needs to pick a direction and commit to it for long enough to see whether it actually works. At the squad level, there are too many players who are either not performing to their potential or who are simply not good enough for where Chelsea need to be. The squad has enormous wage bills and huge transfer fees attached to it, but the actual performances on the pitch do not reflect that investment. At the individual level, as Joao Pedro himself said, the players need to step up. There is a responsibility on the senior players in that dressing room to demand more from themselves and from each other. Right now, it seems like that is missing. And at the managerial level, Chelsea needs stability. They need a proper appointment with proper time to build something. Having an interim manager in charge while the club figures out what it wants to do next is not a foundation for anything. None of these changes happen overnight. But until the people making decisions at Chelsea acknowledge the depth of the problem, nothing will get better. A final thought. Thiago Silva came to Stamford Bridge not because he had to. He came because he loves that club. He cared enough to give up part of his days off after winning a title to come and watch Chelsea play. And what he saw clearly broke something in him. That image of a champion sitting in the stands struggling to hide his emotions while the club he gave so much to keeps falling is the perfect summary of where Chelsea are right now. This is not just a bad run of results, this is a club that is struggling to find itself. And until the people at the top are honest enough to look in the mirror, the way Thiago Silva was honest enough to speak the truth, things are unlikely to change. The fans know it. The players seem to know it, even if they find it difficult to say. And a former player who just won a league title came and watched and could not hold back his feelings. Chelsea have the money, the history, the stadium, and the fan base to be one of the best clubs in the world. Right now, they are not close to that. The gap between what they could be and what they are is painful to look at. But the first step to fixing something is being honest about how broken it is. Thiago Silva did that after one afternoon in the stands. Now the people who actually run the club need to do the same. The question is whether they will, and how much more suffering will the fans go through before that happens.